So I guess there's a ton of these Sherlock Holmes adventure games, and this is the only one I've played because it's on the Xbox instead of the PC. And it's good, but it's not good at being a Sherlock Holmes game, which is a bummer because a good Sherlock Holmes game would be a ton of fun. But this game seems to misunderstand exactly what makes Sherlock Holmes interesting. And what makes Sherlock Holmes interesting isn't that he's good at solving crimes. Lots of people are good at solving crimes. What makes Sherlock Holmes cool and interesting and a famed literary figure is that he can look at a crime scene and a group of suspects and he can come to conclusions that normal people wouldn't come to. Because he's observant and he does cocaine and he's got a sick hat and a dog. And most people don't have those tools at their disposal. So in this game, when you are solving a crime, it doesn't feel like you're doing any of that. They try so hard to make it feel like you are using tools that only Sherlock Holmes has, because like when you are talking to a suspect, it'll have you examine the suspect and be like, oh, he's got dirt under his fingernails, or he's wearing a watch. That's cool, but it also doesn't feel like it goes to the level that the actual Sherlock Holmes did in the books, because I can see that he has a watch. If I can see it just looking at this dude, then it's not that amazing that I can pick up on, oh, he's a gardener because he's got dirt on his pants. And that doesn't even really help me. It's just like a little mini game they do. So it's frustrating that you kind of never feel like you're coming to a conclusion that is unexpected or that you worked out. And this game, at its best, should feel like you are cheating the system and you are coming up with conclusions that they didn't expect you to, even though they did. But it should feel like you're being fed information and you need to internalize that information and come up with a different conclusion. And it never does that, because every case involves you wandering around a location, looking at all the clues, talking to all the people, and then coming to one of, I guess, several conclusions. But the right conclusion is always so obvious that it never feels like you are guessing. It always feels like you are being railroaded down the path towards the actual conclusion. And that sounds kind of negative, but only because the promise of a Sherlock Holmes game where you actually play like Sherlock Holmes is so awesome. Minus that, this game is actually really good. You can tell it's kind of a smaller team creating it, but I think it looks fantastic. The environments are full of so much detail, and they all feel like actual places. Like, you go into like a potting shed, and it's like they could have just made like a bare bones potting shed, but it actually feels like a place. You go into someone's office, and there's like papers all over the place, and there's different like art on the wall in each location, and everything feels very real to life, and it's awesome. The characters aren't fantastic, but they are each different enough that you kind of get a feel for them, because you kind of need to in order to solve the crimes that are being committed, and the crimes that are being committed are actually pretty interesting. They thankfully don't do any, like, it never becomes fantastical. It is always grounded in some kind of reality. Like, the second case you take on is you're waiting at a train stop for a train, and it's foggy out, and as the train is coming towards the station, it disappears. So you're like solving the mystery of a missing train, which is kind of awesome. And you find out there's actually a pretty clever explanation for what happened, and it's not something that is unbelievable. It's something that could actually, I guess, happen. Maybe. It probably wouldn't. But it's a clever way to explore this case. That doesn't mean that things don't become kind of exceptionalized. Like, you go to, in one of the later cases, you're solving this mystery of a murder in like this renovated Roman bathhouse, basically like a sauna. And you end up, through the course of this mystery, going to like ancient Roman ruins and like doing stupid lever pulling puzzles to open gates in like this ancient ruin, and it's like dumb. But it never becomes like, oh, he was cursed by the ghost of Marcus Aurelius and he's, dead now. It never gets to that point. It's just that sometimes they take some liberties with the setting. If all you were doing in this game was talking to people and getting their testimony and then examining clues, I think that would be cool, but they also go a step further and incorporate mini games into it. And some of them are kind of rad, like you're at his science table and you're doing experiments and you have to mix a concoction so that you can remove ink from a letter and then read it. And that stuff's cool, you feel like a detective, but then sometimes it's like shoot ropes at these things and then use the rope bridge, and sometimes you fall off like 30 times before you get to the other side, and it's frustrating. And you can skip any of the mini games. You can totally skip, like at the end of the game when all of a sudden it's like here's 16 lock picking puzzles in a row. You can totally skip them, but then you don't get the sick achievement for doing all the mini games without skipping. And I'm not about that lifestyle. I'm about an achievement getting lifestyle. So I did it. I did all of them. And then I think this game actually ends super, super poorly, but the last case you take on is actually really cool because you've been kind of building up. Cases start off with like, oh, he was murdered, and then it becomes more complex as each case builds because more people are involved and the crimes become more heinous. But at the very end, what actually happens is the last case is Wiggins, your little street urchin buddy. He comes in and he's like, my brother's in jail, they think he shot a guy, but I know he didn't shoot a guy. So then you kind of outside of the rest of the cases, you're kind of just in this alley and there's two bodies on the floor, and it's, you know, it's nighttime, it's very quiet, and it's this nice little end to this game where you're just kind of solving this small murder. But then they totally like ruin it because there have been hints all along of this like anarchist group called the Merry Men, and you get the sense that, you know, at the end you're gonna have to stop the Merry Men. It's gonna be this huge case and they're involved in all the cases. But then at the very, very, very end of the game, after you solve the case, the Merry Men show up and they're like, we're the Merry Men. Here's what we think. We think the government's bad. And then you can choose to be like, okay, I'll let you blow up Parliament or whatever. Or, no, I don't think you should blow up Parliament. And that's it. And you can just be like, okay, blow up Parliament. It's not Parliament, it's whatever. They blow up a building. And it's like, okay, sure. Sherlock Holmes, you're so crazy. And then the last cutscene is that building blowing up in the background, and then Watson's like, there's a lady moving in next door, and then Sherlock Holmes is like, a lady, you say? And then that's the end of the game. Roll credits. It's ridiculous. Oh my god. And then my other favorite thing is the loading screens are you in like a carriage going to a location, right? But they use like the Hanna-Barbera thing for it, so like you're just sitting in a carriage and you can totally tell that like either the carriage is spinning or the background is spinning around it, because it totally doesn't look like you're moving in a straight line. It looks like you're just spinning and all the trees are spinning past you. It's so weird looking. Oh my god. Whew.